The invitation trembled in my hand as I watched my family's faces, not from grief or regret, but from the effort it took not to smile. "So, you'll really just bring her?" my brother Marcus asked, eyebrows raised in mock concern, while his fingers intertwined with those of his wife Vanessa. She sat beside him at our parents' mahogany dining table, the one they'd bought to celebrate Dad's promotion to Chief Financial Officer 20 years ago. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. "I'm bringing Commander Mitchell as my +1 to the family reunion," I said evenly, placing the invitation on the table between us. "Just so we're clear." Vanessa's eyes scanned my appearance, lingering on my simple navy blazer, my sensible shoes, the practical hairstyle that I'd maintained since joining the Navy's Civilian Administrative Corps 15 years ago. "It's just," my mother began, dabbing at the corner of her mouth with her embroidered napkin. "We thought you might bring someone more suitable. Someone who understands our family traditions." She didn't need to elaborate. I knew what she meant. Someone from our social circle, preferably male, definitely wealthy, and absolutely not my boss. "Catherine's just a secretary," my father chuckled, swirling his expensive bourbon. "What would Admiral Mitchell even talk about with us? Naval paperwork?" The table erupted in laughter, except for my younger sister Emma, who shot me a sympathetic glance from across the table. At 35, I was the oldest child, and the only one who had ventured outside the family's financial empire. "Administrative officer," I corrected automatically, though I knew it wouldn't matter. In the Reynolds family, anything less than executive level was considered clerical work. And Commander Mitchell is actually quite fascinating. She's led humanitarian missions in 12 countries. "I'm sure she's very nice, dear," my mother soothed, in the tone she used when humoring someone. "But the Admiral's Gala is our most important social event of the year. Your father has invited all his most valuable clients." I nodded slowly, not bothering to correct her assumption that I was bringing Eliza as some sort of statement rather than because we'd been dating for 8 months. "I'll pick her up at 7. My name is Catherine Reynolds. I'm 35 and a senior administrative officer for the United States Navy. This is the story of how I finally stood up not just for myself but for the woman I love. 3 years ago, I accepted a position working directly for Commander Eliza Mitchell, believing it was just another job. She was 38, a decorated officer with a sterling reputation, and recently appointed to oversee logistics for international relief operations. The office was efficient but impersonal, walls lined with maps and achievement certificates rather than personal photographs. Commander Mitchell was known for her professionalism, sometimes mistaken for coldness. When I arrived for my first day, she greeted me with a firm handshake and a detailed overview of expectations. "I need absolute precision, Ms. Reynolds," she said, her gray eyes serious beneath her cap. "Lives depend on our ability to coordinate resources efficiently." There was no small talk, no questions about my background or family, just work. I quickly learned that Commander Mitchell's reputation for being demanding was well-earned. Every report had to be impeccable, every schedule optimized to the minute. In my first week, I stayed late every night, determined to prove my worth. By Friday, as I was finalizing a complex supply chain analysis at 8 p.m., she appeared in my doorway. "You're still here," she observed, her uniform still crisp despite the late hour. It wasn't a question, but I answered anyway. "Just finishing the Bangladesh logistics report, Commander. I wanted to make sure the supply routes accounted for the monsoon season variables." Something shifted in her expression. Not quite a smile, but a softening around the eyes. "Have you eaten dinner, Ms. Reynolds?" That night we shared takeout in her office, reviewing the report together. I discovered that Commander Mitchell wasn't cold. She was focused. Her intensity came from understanding that her decisions affected people in crisis. As she explained the impact of proper resource allocation during natural disasters, I saw passion beneath the professionalism. "Your attention to detail could save lives," she told me before we left that night. Not everyone understands that. Over the next months, our professional relationship developed into mutual respect. I streamlined administrative processes. She trusted me with increasingly important responsibilities. We began having weekly strategy sessions that often extended into dinner discussions. I learned about her childhood in a military family, moving every few years, finding stability in structure and service. She listened with genuine interest to my stories of growing up in the suffocating privilege of the Reynolds dynasty. "You could have had any cushy corporate job," she remarked one evening as we walked to the parking lot. "Why choose government service?" I wanted to do something that mattered beyond quarterly profits, I admitted. My family never understood that. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. The shift from professional to personal happened gradually, then suddenly. A brush of hands while reviewing documents, lingering glances across conference rooms, late-night text messages that had nothing to do with work. After a particularly grueling week coordinating emergency supplies for a typhoon-ravaged region, she invited me to dinner, not at our usual casual spots near the office, but at an elegant restaurant overlooking the harbor. She wore civilian clothes that night, a simple black dress that transformed her from commanding officer to simply Eliza. Without her uniform, I saw her differently. The way she moved with quiet confidence. The slight curl at the ends of her short hair. The small scar near her right eyebrow from a childhood accident. "I've been wanting to ask you something," she said after we'd ordered. "But I need to be clear that your answer won't affect our professional relationship." My heart raced as she explained the strict protocols regarding relationships within chains of command, how we would need to disclose to HR, how one of us might need to transfer, how careful we would need to be. "Are you asking me out, Commander?" I smiled, using her title deliberately. "I'm asking if you'd consider seeing Eliza, not just Commander Mitchell," she replied, her usually steady hands slightly tense around her water glass. That night changed everything. We moved cautiously at first, navigating the complex waters of our professional and personal connection. Eliza was meticulous about maintaining propriety at work. No special treatment, no public displays of affection, not even lingering looks. But after hours, I discovered the woman behind the uniform. Her dry sense of humor, her love of classical music, her inability to cook anything more complicated than scrambled eggs. I fell in love with her dedication, her integrity, her unwavering moral compass. The way she remembered details about people others overlooked. How she could command a room without raising her voice. The vulnerability she showed only to me. For 8 months, we built something beautiful together. I transferred to a different department to eliminate the reporting conflict, though we still worked together frequently. We spent weekends exploring coastal towns, enjoying the anonymity they provided. Eliza met my sister Emma, the only family member I trusted not to judge. I met her parents, both retired military, who welcomed me with warm efficiency that explained so much about their daughter. What I couldn't bring myself to do was introduce her to the rest of my family. The Reynolds dynasty operated like a corporation with my father as CEO. My brother Marcus was the heir apparent, working directly under our father at Reynolds Financial Group. My sister-in-law Vanessa managed their charitable foundation, carefully selecting causes that generated maximum publicity. Even my younger siblings had designated roles in the family business. I was the outlier, the disappointment, the one who had rejected a guaranteed executive position to work as Justice Secretary for the government. Family dinners were exercises in polite condescension as they asked when I would come to my senses and join the family enterprise. Bringing Eliza into that environment seemed impossible. Not because I was ashamed of her, but because I couldn't bear for her to see how they viewed me. How they would inevitably view her. Until the invitation arrived for the Admiral's Gala. The annual event was a highlight of my family's social calendar, not because they cared about naval achievements, but because it attracted wealthy potential clients. My father had been a major donor for years, ensuring prime seating and networking opportunities. Attendance was mandatory for all Reynolds family members. When I mentioned the upcoming gala to Eliza, her eyes lit up. "That's quite an event. Several of my colleagues will be receiving commendations. Would you like to attend together?" I asked impulsively. My family always has a table. The moment the words left my mouth, I regretted them. Not because I didn't want Eliza there, but because I knew exactly how my family would react. Still, seeing her excitement, I couldn't take back the invitation, which led to the uncomfortable family dinner where I announced my +1. As I left my parents' house that night, my sister Emma followed me to my car. "They'll behave at the gala," she assured me. "Too many important people watching." "That's not what I'm worried about," I admitted. "I'm worried about how they'll treat her, how they'll look at her, how they'll talk about her profession like it's beneath them." Emma squeezed my hand. "Then maybe it's time they learned that not everyone measures success by the size of their investment portfolio." The night of the gala arrived with perfect weather, clear skies and a gentle breeze off the harbor. I arrived at Eliza's apartment to find her in her full dress uniform, medals and ribbons displayed across her chest. The sight of her, powerful, distinguished, radiating quiet authority, took my breath away. "You look incredible," I managed, suddenly feeling underdressed in my midnight blue evening gown. "So do you," she smiled, her eyes warm as she took my appearance in. "Are you ready for this?" I wasn't, but I nodded anyway. The drive to the historic hotel where the gala was held was quiet, both of us lost in our thoughts. As we approached the grand entrance, I felt Eliza's hand slip into mine. "Whatever happens tonight," she said softly, "know that I'm proud to be with you." The ballroom was already crowded when we arrived, a sea of dress uniforms and evening wear under crystal chandeliers. My family had claimed their usual prime table near the front, perfectly positioned to see and be seen. I took a deep breath and led Eliza toward them. My father saw us first, his practiced social smile freezing slightly as he registered Eliza's uniform with all its decorations. My mother's eyes widened, darting around to see if anyone was watching. Marcus and Vanessa exchanged glances loaded with unspoken judgment. "Everyone," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "This is Commander Eliza Mitchell. Eliza, my family." My father recovered first, extending his hand. "Commander, we were expecting—" "Well, Catherine didn't specify your rank." "What an unexpected surprise." "The pleasure is mine, Mr. Reynolds," Eliza replied, her handshake firm and professional. "Catherine speaks very highly of her family." A practiced lie, but a kind one. She knew exactly how little I enjoyed these family gatherings. We took our seats as my mother launched into polite but probing questions. Where did Eliza grow up? Military bases across the country and abroad. Where did she attend university? Annapolis, on a full merit scholarship. What exactly did she do in the Navy? Her simplified explanation of coordinating international humanitarian missions seemed to disappoint my status-conscious mother. Throughout the questioning, Eliza remained poised and articulate, neither apologizing for her background nor embellishing it. I watched my family's reactions shift from dismissive curiosity to confused reassessment. This was not the administrative assistant they had expected. Dinner progressed with increasingly strained conversation. My father attempted to impress Eliza with stories of his financial conquests. My brother boasted about his recent acquisition of a struggling tech company, emphasizing the layoffs that had made it profitable again. Vanessa detailed their latest charity gala, which had raised millions for a cause I suspected she couldn't name without checking her notes. Through it all, Eliza listened politely, asking insightful questions that sometimes revealed how little they actually understood about their own business operations. I could see their growing discomfort, as they realized she wasn't intimidated by their wealth or status. When the dinner plates were cleared, my father leaned toward Eliza with the condescending smile he reserved for people he considered useful but inferior. "So, Commander, I imagine you must be quite helpful to Catherine in her secretarial duties." The table fell silent. Even Vanessa looked embarrassed. "Actually," Eliza replied calmly, "Catherine is one of the most capable logistics specialists I've ever worked with. Her organizational systems have been implemented across 3 departments, and were recently cited in a Pentagon efficiency report." My father blinked, clearly not expecting this response. "Well, that's nice. But surely she could apply those same skills in our family business. We've always had a position waiting for her." He turned to me. "The offer still stands, sweetheart. Something more befitting a Reynolds." Quote. Before I could respond, the evening's formal program began. The Master of Ceremonies welcomed everyone and introduced the Chief of Naval Operations, Admiral Wilson, a distinguished officer with 4 decades of service. He approached the podium to polite applause. As Admiral Wilson began recognizing outstanding service, I felt Eliza straighten beside me. Something in his speech had caught her attention. I listened more carefully as he described an international crisis response team that had coordinated a massive rescue operation following a devastating earthquake. The leadership demonstrated during this operation saved thousands of lives under extremely challenging conditions, Admiral Wilson was saying. It is my honor to recognize Commander Eliza Mitchell, whose strategic vision and tireless dedication made this humanitarian mission a success against overwhelming odds. My family turned to stare at Eliza, who squeezed my hand once before standing. Around us, naval officers in dress uniform rose as well, a sign of deep respect. Commander Mitchell, Admiral Wilson continued, your exemplary service reflects the highest traditions of the United States Navy. Please come forward to receive the Navy Distinguished Service Medal. As Eliza made her way to the stage, Admiral Wilson stepped down and did something unexpected. He came to attention and saluted her first, a powerful gesture of respect from the Navy's highest-ranking officer to someone significantly junior in rank. The room fell completely silent. I watched my family's faces transform from confusion to shock as Admiral Wilson detailed Eliza's achievements, coordinating the delivery of emergency supplies to remote regions cut off by landslides, establishing field hospitals that treated over 10,000 patients, creating an evacuation system that moved hundreds of critically injured victims to specialized medical facilities. Commander Mitchell's innovative logistics strategies have become the standard operating procedure for international disaster response, Admiral Wilson concluded. Her work represents the finest example of American leadership and humanitarian commitment. As Eliza accepted the medal with characteristic humility, I couldn't help but look back at my family's table. My father's mouth hung slightly open. My mother sat rigid with surprise. Marcus and Vanessa exchanged looks of disbelief. Only Emma was smiling, giving me a subtle thumbs up across the table. When Eliza returned to our table, Admiral Wilson followed, stopping to speak with her. Commander, exceptional work as always. The coordination with international agencies was particularly impressive. Then he turned to me, extending his hand. Ms. Reynolds, I presume. I've heard excellent things about your contributions to the logistics modernization program. The new procurement tracking system has already reduced response times by 30%. Thank you, Admiral, I managed, stunned that he knew who I was. Don't look so surprised, he smiled. Commander Mitchell speaks very highly of your work. In fact, I'd like to discuss a potential promotion with you next week. We need more minds like yours in the Senior Administrative Corps. As he moved on to other tables, I turned to find my entire family staring at me, as if seeing me for the first time. The woman they had dismissed as just a secretary had just been personally acknowledged by a 4-star admiral. The commander they had belittled as beneath our family's social standing had just received one of the highest honors in the naval service. My father cleared his throat. Catherine, I had no idea your position involved such responsibility. There's a lot you don't know about what I do, I replied quietly. Or who I am. And who Commander Mitchell is to you? My mother asked delicately, her eyes darting between us, finally registering the way we sat together, the natural intimacy of our body language. I took Eliza's hand openly on the table. She's the most extraordinary person I've ever known. She's dedicated her life to saving others. And yes, she's also the woman I love. The admission hung in the air between us. Years of unspoken tensions, of feeling inadequate by their standards, of hiding parts of myself to avoid disappointment. All of it crystallized in that moment of truth. Marcus was the first to speak. Why didn't you tell us? About your work? About her? Would you have listened? I asked simply. Or would you have told me I was wasting my potential on government work, when I could be making millions at Reynolds Financial? No one answered, because we all knew the truth. For years, they had seen only what they expected to see. The family disappointment, the underachiever, the secretary. They had never bothered to look deeper, to understand that I had built a life of purpose and meaning that had nothing to do with their definition of success. As the evening continued, something shifted in my family's behavior. My father engaged Eliza in conversation about international relations, listening with uncharacteristic attention to her insights. My mother asked genuine questions about my work, showing interest rather than polite dismissal. Even Marcus seemed to be reconsidering his assumptions, watching thoughtfully as other high-ranking officers stopped by to speak with Eliza. Later, as we prepared to leave, my father pulled me aside. "I think I owe you an apology, Catherine. I've been narrow-minded about what constitutes meaningful work. What you're doing, what Commander Mitchell is doing, it matters. It wasn't a complete transformation. Years of ingrained attitudes wouldn't change in a single evening. But it was a start. A crack in the fortress of family expectations that had seemed impenetrable for so long." As Eliza and I walked hand in hand through the hotel lobby, she smiled at me. "So how does it feel? Having Admiral Wilson essentially announce your promotion in front of your entire family? Honestly, less important than finally being honest with them about us," I admitted. Though the timing was pretty spectacular. She laughed, the sound warm and private in the quiet night air. "I may have mentioned to Admiral Wilson that my brilliant girlfriend would be attending with her somewhat judgmental family. He is surprisingly perceptive for a man who commands thousands of sailors." "You planned this?" I asked, amazed. "Not the award, that was genuine. But the timing of mentioning your promotion? Let's just say I've learned a thing or two about strategic operations." She kissed me softly under the stars. Some battles are worth the careful planning. That night changed my relationship with my family forever. Not because they suddenly valued government service over private wealth, but because they finally saw me, truly saw me, for the first time in years. They saw the woman I had become, the life I had chosen, and the love I had found. Sometimes it takes an admiral's salute to make people recognize the worth that was always there, hidden in plain sight. And sometimes the greatest victory isn't winning someone else's approval. It's no longer needing it to know your own value. Before you go, here's a quick bonus for sticking around. If you love learning and growing like I do, remember that the most powerful stories are the ones we live ourselves. Don't let others define your worth or dictate your path. Your unique journey matters. All the details of your own story are waiting to be written by you, and you alone get to decide what success truly means. The drive home from the Admiral's gala was filled with a comfortable silence, the kind that exists between two people who understand each other completely. Eliza's medal gleamed subtly in the darkness, catching occasional flashes from passing streetlights. I couldn't stop glancing at her profile, strong, dignified, yet somehow softer in the night shadows. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. "You're staring," she noted without turning her head, a small smile playing at the corner of her lips. "Can you blame me? It's not every day I get to drive home with a naval hero." I reached across the console to take her hand, careful not to wrinkle her immaculate uniform sleeve. She laughed softly, the sound warming the car interior more effectively than the heater. "Hardly a hero. Just doing my job." "That's exactly what makes you extraordinary," I replied. "The way you see your accomplishments as simply part of your duty, when anyone else would be broadcasting them from rooftops." We pulled into the parking lot of her apartment building, but neither of us moved to get out. The evening had been momentous in ways I hadn't anticipated, and I found myself reluctant to let it end. "Stay tonight?" Eliza asked, her voice carrying a rare note of vulnerability. "I know it's a weeknight, but yes," I answered before she could finish. Some decisions require no deliberation. Inside her apartment, I helped her remove her metal-laden jacket with the reverence it deserved, watching as she carefully placed each decoration in its proper storage box. Even in this private moment, her precision remained intact, a fundamental part of who she was, not a performance for others. "Your family seemed surprised," she commented as she changed into more comfortable clothes. The understatement made me laugh. That's like saying the Titanic passengers were mildly inconvenienced, I replied, slipping out of my formal gown. I think my father nearly swallowed his cocktail olive when Admiral Wilson saluted you. Eliza smiled, but her eyes held a question. Why didn't you ever tell them about your work? About us? I sat on the edge of her bed, suddenly feeling the weight of years of strained family dynamics. I stopped trying to make them understand my choices a long time ago. It was easier to let them think I was just shuffling papers than to constantly defend my decisions. She joined me, her shoulder pressing comfortingly against mine. And us? That was different, I admitted. That was fear. Not of their disapproval. I've lived with that for years. I was afraid of how they might treat you. That they might make you feel less than the remarkable person you are. Eliza took my face in her hands, her touch gentle but sure. Catherine Reynolds, I have navigated war zones and natural disasters. I think I can handle your family's dinner conversation. The next morning, my phone buzzed repeatedly with text notifications as I prepared for work, all from family members. My mother wanted to schedule lunch. My father asked if I could brief him on my department's operations. Even Marcus sent an awkwardly worded message suggesting a, quote, sibling catch-up. Suddenly popular? Eliza asked, watching me stare at my phone in disbelief. Suddenly visible. I corrected. It's amazing what a difference one evening can make. She nodded thoughtfully, adjusting her uniform tie with practiced movements. The question is, what will you do with this visibility? It was a profound question, one that followed me throughout the day. For years, I had maintained emotional distance from my family, protecting myself from their judgment by sharing only the most superficial details of my life. Now that they were finally seeing me, truly seeing me, what did I want that relationship to become? The answer didn't come immediately. Instead, it unfolded over the following weeks as I cautiously began rebuilding connections with my family on my terms. I accepted my mother's lunch invitation, choosing a modest bistro near my office rather than her usual upscale venues. When she arrived, impeccably dressed as always, there was a new hesitancy in her manner, as if she was suddenly unsure of the script we had followed for years. "This is nice," she commented, looking around at the simple but charming decor. "Busy?" "It's popular with the government crowd," I explained. "Good food, reasonable prices, and they get you back to work on time." She nodded, studying the menu with unusual concentration. After we ordered, she set aside her practiced social smile and met my eyes directly. "I've been thinking about the gala," she began. "About Commander Mitchell." "About you." I waited, giving her space to continue. "I realize I haven't really understood what you do," she admitted. "All these years I've been, well, disappointed that you chose government service over the family business. I thought you were settling for less." Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story. "I wasn't settling, Mom," I said gently. "I was choosing differently. There are many ways to build a meaningful life." She reached across the table and took my hand, a gesture so uncharacteristic that it momentarily stunned me. "I see that now. Or I'm beginning to." She paused. "And Eliza, she seems remarkable." "She is," I confirmed, feeling a swell of pride. "How long have you been together?" she asked. And though there was still discomfort in her expression, there was also a genuine attempt to understand. 8 months, I told her. It started professionally, but became more. My mother nodded slowly. "You love her." It wasn't a question. "I do. Your father and I would like to have you both for dinner," she said carefully. "A proper dinner, not like before. Something welcoming." The invitation surprised me, but not as much as my mother's next words. "I want to know my daughter," she said, her voice softening. "The real Catherine, not the version I thought you should be." That lunch marked the beginning of a slow transformation in my family relationships. Not a dramatic reversal of lifelong patterns, but small, significant shifts. My father called to discuss my upcoming promotion, asking thoughtful questions about my responsibilities. Marcus invited me for coffee and actually listened when I explained the logistics challenges of international aid distribution. Even Vanessa made an effort, sending me information about a charity supporting veterans that her foundation was considering, genuinely seeking my input rather than just announcing their decisions. But the most profound change happened 2 weeks after the gala, when my parents hosted the promised dinner for Eliza and me. Unlike our previous family gatherings, this was intimate. Just my parents, Emma, Eliza, and me. The formal dining room was bypassed in favor of the cozier garden room. My mother had even prepared some of the dishes herself, something she hadn't done in years. "Commander," my father began as we settled around the table. "Eliza, please," she corrected him with a warm smile. He nodded, seeming relieved at the informality. "Eliza, I owe you and Catherine an apology. My behavior at the gala was, well, it reflected assumptions I'm not proud of. Coming from my father, a man who prided himself on never admitting mistakes, this was extraordinary." "I appreciate that, Mr. Reynolds," Eliza replied. "James," he offered, and raised his glass in a toast. To new understandings. Throughout dinner, I watched in amazement as my parents engaged with Eliza, not as a novelty or a curiosity, but as a person worthy of genuine interest. They asked about her career path, her experiences abroad, her perspective on international relations. She told stories of coordinating relief efforts during natural disasters, of working with local communities to rebuild infrastructure, of creating systems that continued to function long after American forces had withdrawn. "The real challenge isn't delivering the initial aid," she explained as my father listened intently. "It's establishing sustainable processes that empower local leadership to continue the work." That's not unlike business development in emerging markets, my father noted. The principles of effective infrastructure transfer are similar, even if the contexts differ. I watched them find unexpected common ground, two people from vastly different worlds discovering shared values beneath their obvious differences. My mother, meanwhile, had drawn me into a separate conversation, asking questions about my daily work with an attentiveness I couldn't remember her showing before. "What exactly does your promotion entail?" she asked. "Admiral Wilson seemed to think very highly of your contributions." As I explained the scope of my new responsibilities, overseeing administrative operations for multiple humanitarian missions across 3 continents, I saw something shift in her expression. The polite interest became genuine engagement as she began to understand the real impact of work she had previously dismissed. "You'll be managing international teams?" she asked. "Coordinating across different time zones and cultures?" "Yes," I confirmed. "It's complex but incredibly rewarding. When our systems work smoothly, aid reaches people who desperately need it more quickly and efficiently." "That's remarkable, Catherine," she said, and for the first time in my adult life, I heard authentic pride in her voice, not for what she wished I would do, but for what I was actually doing. Emma, who had been quietly observing these transformations, caught my eye across the table and raised her glass in a subtle toast. She had always been my ally, believing in me when no one else in the family did. Now, she was witnessing the validation she had always insisted would eventually come. After dinner, we moved to the living room for coffee. Eliza excused herself to take a brief call from her commanding officer, leaving me momentarily alone with my family. "She's extraordinary," my father said, watching Eliza step onto the patio for privacy. "Accomplished, intelligent, principled." "I know," I replied simply. "And she clearly adores you," my mother added. "The way she looks at you when you're speaking, it's quite beautiful." I felt a flush of happiness at their observations. "We understand each other. We value the same things." "That's more important than anything else," Emma chimed in. "Finding someone who sees the world as you do." My father cleared his throat, seeming uncharacteristically emotional. I need to say something, Catherine. For years, I've been pushing you toward a path I thought would make you successful. I defined success very narrowly, by titles, by income, by social position. I nodded, acknowledging the truth of his words. Seeing you with Eliza, understanding what you've built together and the work you're both doing, it's made me reconsider many things. He looked down at his hands, then back up at me. I'm proud of you, not because an admiral recognized you, but because you've had the courage to define success on your own terms. The words I had longed to hear for most of my adult life left me momentarily speechless. My mother reached over and took my hand. We both are, she said softly, proud of who you've become. When Eliza returned, she found me surrounded by my family, engaged in conversation more authentic than any we had shared in years. She slipped back into the seat beside me, her hand finding mine naturally. Everything okay? I asked, noting the serious expression she tried to mask. My commanding officer has some news, she said carefully. There's a major humanitarian crisis developing in Southeast Asia. Severe flooding has displaced hundreds of thousands of people. I immediately understood the implications. When do you deploy? 3 days, she replied. It's going to be a complex operation. Multiple countries affected, infrastructure severely compromised. My family fell silent, the reality of Eliza's work suddenly concrete rather than abstract. This wasn't a medal ceremony or an impressive title, this was the actual substance of her commitment to service. How long will you be gone? My mother asked, concern evident in her voice. Initial deployment is 6 weeks, but these situations are unpredictable, Eliza explained. Could be shorter if conditions improve rapidly, could be longer if the situation deteriorates. Will you be in danger? My father asked directly. Eliza answered with characteristic honesty. There are always risks in disaster zones: disease, unstable structures, secondary weather events. But our primary concerns are logistical: getting clean water, medical supplies, and temporary shelter to affected areas before secondary crises develop. I felt the familiar mixture of pride and anxiety that accompanied her deployments. This was who she was, someone who ran toward crisis rather than away from it. It was fundamental to her character, to what had drawn me to her in the first place. Catherine will be coordinating much of the administrative support from here, Eliza added, squeezing my hand. Her promotion came at the perfect time. She'll be essential to the operation's success. My family turned to me with new understanding. This wasn't abstract either. This was my work, directly supporting Eliza's team on the ground, helping to save lives through efficient systems and processes. What can we do? Emma asked simply. It was such an unexpected question that both Eliza and I looked at her in surprise. To help, she clarified. Surely there's something we can do. Eliza considered this thoughtfully. Actually, there is. The Reynolds Foundation has connections that could be valuable, corporate transport assets that might be repurposed for aid delivery, manufacturing contacts who could expedite production of needed supplies. My father leaned forward, suddenly engaged in a way I had only ever seen him with business opportunities. Make a list of what you need. I'll start making calls tomorrow. The conversation shifted, becoming focused and practical. My father offered corporate resources. My mother suggested a fundraising event among their social circle. And even Marcus began brainstorming how their financial expertise might help manage the complex international fund transfers that humanitarian operations required. I watched in amazement as my family, who had dismissed my career for years, rallied around the mission that defined both Eliza's life and mine. They weren't just accepting us, they were joining us, bringing their considerable resources and connections to bear on a cause larger than themselves. Later that night, as Eliza and I prepared for bed in my apartment, she watched me with a thoughtful expression. That was quite a transformation, she observed. Your family really stepped up. I'm still processing it, I admitted. For years, I felt like I was speaking a language they couldn't understand. Now suddenly, they're not just hearing me, they're speaking back. Eliza sat beside me, taking my hands in hers. Some people need to see something tangible before they can value it. For your family, the Admiral's recognition made my work real. Understanding my work helped them see the value in yours. It shouldn't have taken that, I said, feeling a twinge of the old hurt. No, she agreed. But they're trying now. That's worth something. I nodded, acknowledging the truth in her words. I'm going to miss you terribly when you deploy. I know, she said softly. But I'll be carrying you with me. Your systems, your processes. They'll be guiding our work every day. And when I come home... She didn't finish the sentence, but she didn't need to. When she came home, we would continue building the life we had chosen together, a life of purpose, of service, of love that transcended conventional definitions of success. The next 3 days passed in a blur of preparation. Eliza was consumed with operational planning, while I worked to establish the administrative infrastructure that would support the mission. My family, true to their word, mobilized their resources. My father secured transportation agreements with 3 international shipping companies. My mother organized a fundraising event that raised over $200,000 in 48 hours. Marcus worked with international banking partners to create expedited channels for emergency fund transfers. On the morning of Eliza's deployment, my entire family surprised us by coming to the airfield. They stood together, watching as military personnel loaded equipment and supplies onto the massive transport plane. We wanted to see her off, my father explained simply, to wish her good luck. As Eliza finished her final checks and prepared to board, she approached my family with the same confidence she brought to everything. She shook hands with my father and brother, accepted a warm embrace from my mother and Emma, and then turned to me. In full view of my family and her colleagues, she took me in her arms and kissed me with a depth of feeling that acknowledged the separation ahead. When we parted, she touched my face gently. 6 weeks, she promised. Keep the systems running smoothly until I get back. Always, I replied, my voice steady despite the emotions churning inside. As she walked toward the plane, Admiral Wilson appeared, having come to personally oversee the deployment. He saw Eliza and came to attention, offering her a crisp salute that she returned with equal precision. Then, to my astonishment, he turned toward where I stood with my family and saluted again. Not to my father with his wealth and social position, but to me. Ms. Reynolds. He called over the noise of the airfield. The operation is in excellent hands with you coordinating from here. Commander Mitchell speaks very highly of your capabilities. Thank you, Admiral, I replied, standing a bit straighter. We won't let you down. As the plane taxied away, my family gathered around me. Not with the pity or concern I might have expected in the past, but with respect and understanding. They had finally seen what Eliza had recognized from the beginning. That value isn't measured by titles or bank accounts, but by the impact of the work we choose to do. She'll be safe, my father said, his hand on my shoulder. And in the meantime, you have work to do. We all do. In that moment, standing on the airfield, with my family united in purpose for perhaps the first time in our adult lives, I understood what Eliza had been teaching me all along. True recognition doesn't come from external validation, not from admirals or family members or society at large. It comes from knowing your own worth and doing work that matters, regardless of who notices. But when that recognition does come, when someone finally sees you for who you truly are, it can transform not just how others value you, but how entire families understand what truly matters in this world. Sometimes it takes an admiral's salute to change how others see you, but the real victory is in remaining true to yourself long enough for them to finally look. The first week after Eliza's deployment passed in a blur of 18-hour workdays. My promotion had come with increased responsibilities that would have been challenging under normal circumstances. During an active humanitarian crisis, they were all-consuming. I coordinated supply chains across 3 countries, managed communication between field teams and headquarters, and troubleshot logistical problems that emerged hourly as conditions on the ground evolved. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed. Because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. Sleep became a luxury. Meals were whatever could be eaten at my desk, and my apartment transformed into a secondary command center, with maps and status reports covering every surface. Video conferences with Eliza's team occurred at odd hours to accommodate the 12-hour time difference. During these calls, I caught glimpses of her, focused, decisive, often visibly exhausted but never deterred by the mounting challenges. "The Western Province is completely cut off," she reported during our third late-night briefing. Behind her, I could see the makeshift command center her team had established in what appeared to be a school gymnasium. "Roads are washed out, bridges collapsed. We need alternative delivery methods for medical supplies within 48 hours. I've been coordinating with the Reynolds Foundation," I told her, pulling up the relevant files on my screen. "They've secured access to 3 private helicopters that can be repurposed for aid delivery. Pilots are standing by for your coordinates." A flash of surprise crossed her face. "Your family arranged this?" "My father personally called in favors from 3 different corporate executives." I confirmed, "The helicopters will be at your disposal for the duration of the crisis." Something shifted in Eliza's expression, a softening amid the intensity of command. "That's remarkable, Catherine. Please convey my gratitude." "I will," I promised. "How are you holding up?" She glanced around to ensure none of her team was within earshot before answering. "It's worse than we anticipated. The flooding damaged the water treatment plants. We're seeing the first cases of waterborne diseases." The race against time just got more urgent. I nodded, already making mental notes of the additional medical supplies we would need to divert to her location. "I'll adjust the priority manifest. Anything else you need?" Her eyes met mine through the screen, conveying what she couldn't say with her team nearby. "Just you, but that will have to wait." 6 weeks, I reminded her, echoing her promise from the airfield. 6 weeks, she agreed, though we both knew that timeline was increasingly optimistic as the situation deteriorated. After the call ended, I allowed myself 5 minutes to miss her, to worry about her safety, to long for her presence, before returning to the work that connected us even across thousands of miles. My systems supported her operations. Her leadership gave purpose to my precision. Even separated, we were partners in the truest sense. The next morning, I was surprised by a knock on my office door. My assistant looked equally startled as she announced, "Mr. and Mrs. Reynolds to see you, ma'am." My parents stood in the doorway, looking oddly out of place in the utilitarian government building. My father in his bespoke suit, my mother elegantly dressed as always, both carrying insulated bags that seemed incongruous with their attire. "Mom? Dad? Is everything okay?" I asked, rising from behind my desk, which was buried under maps and requisition forms. "We brought lunch," my mother announced, holding up her bag. "And dinner. And tomorrow's breakfast. Emma mentioned you've been working around the clock." I blinked in surprise. "You brought me food?" "Your mother cooked," my father added, a note of pride in his voice. "And I've brought some updates on the helicopter arrangements. We've secured a 4th aircraft that can be deployed if needed." They entered my office, clearing a space on the conference table to unpack containers of homemade food, enough to feed not just me, but my entire team. The simple act of care was so unexpected that I felt a sudden tightness in my throat. "You didn't have to do this," I managed. "We wanted to," my mother said simply. "You're doing important work. We're just trying to support you in whatever way we can." Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. My father surveyed the maps and documents covering every surface of my office. "This is quite an operation you're coordinating." "It's challenging," I admitted. "The situation keeps evolving. We're adapting constantly." He nodded, studying a logistics flowchart pinned to my wall. "This reminds me of the supply chain restructuring we did during the pandemic. Different context, same principles of adaptive management." For the first time, my father was seeing my work through the lens of his own expertise, recognizing the complexity and skill involved rather than dismissing it as mere administrative support. The validation shouldn't have mattered after all these years of independence, but I found myself standing a little straighter as he examined my systems with genuine interest. "How is Commander Mitchell doing?" my mother asked, arranging the food containers in my small office refrigerator with meticulous care. "She's facing difficult conditions," I said honestly. "The flooding damaged infrastructure beyond initial assessments. They're working around the clock to prevent secondary crises." My mother's hands stilled. Is she safe? The question carried genuine concern, not the polite inquiry of someone making conversation, but the worried interest of someone who had begun to care. As safe as anyone can be in a disaster zone, I replied. Eliza is extremely capable. She has excellent training and an outstanding team. My father rejoined the conversation. The foundation has raised an additional $800,000 for the relief effort. Where can it do the most good? We spent the next hour discussing resource allocation, my father bringing his financial acumen to bear on the complex challenges of international aid distribution. My mother, meanwhile, quietly organized my chaotic office, creating order that would help me work more efficiently. Neither of them commented on the long hours or suggested I should delegate more. They simply offered practical support for the work I had chosen. As they prepared to leave, my father hesitated at the door. Catherine, your mother and I have been thinking. We'd like to establish a permanent humanitarian response fund through the Reynolds Foundation. Something substantial, with dedicated resources that can be mobilized quickly in crises like this. That would be incredible, I said, genuinely moved by the proposal. We'd like you to help design it, my mother added. When this current situation stabilizes, you understand the real needs in ways we never could. And perhaps Commander Mitchell could advise as well, my father suggested. Her field experience would be invaluable in creating something truly effective. They were offering not just acceptance, but partnership, a way to bridge our different worlds by focusing on shared values rather than surface differences. It was more than I had ever expected from them, a transformation I hadn't believed possible even after the night of the gala. I'd be honored, I told them, and I know Eliza would be as well. After they left, I returned to my work with renewed energy, carrying their support like an invisible shield against the exhaustion and stress. That night, during my video conference with Eliza, I shared the news of my parents' visit and their proposal for the humanitarian fund. That's extraordinary, she said, her image pixelating slightly as the connection wavered. A permanent fund could make a significant difference in response times. They want us both involved in designing it, I told her. They value your expertise. Even through the unstable connection, I could see how much this meant to her. Your family has come a long way in a short time. They needed to see what was always there, I replied. Just like I needed the Admiral's recognition to finally believe in my own worth. She shook her head. You never needed external validation, Catherine. You've always known your value. You just needed others to catch up. The weeks of Eliza's deployment stretched from 6 to 8 as the crisis response entered its recovery phase. Throughout this time, my family remained actively engaged, not just with financial support, but with genuine interest in the work Eliza and I were doing. My father leveraged his business connections to secure additional resources. My mother organized volunteers to assemble supply kits. Even Marcus and Vanessa redirected foundation priorities to support long-term rebuilding efforts in the affected regions. Emma, who had always been my ally, watched these developments with quiet satisfaction. I always knew they would eventually see you, she told me during a rare coffee break. They just needed the right lens to look through. Eliza provided that lens, I acknowledged. No, Emma corrected gently. You did. By staying true to yourself long enough for them to finally notice what was always there. The day of Eliza's return dawned clear and crisp, the kind of perfect autumn morning that seemed designed for new beginnings. I arrived at the airfield 2 hours early, too anxious and excited to wait at home. To my surprise, I found my entire family already there, waiting with me. We wanted to welcome her home properly, my mother explained, adjusting the enormous welcome banner my father and Marcus were struggling to hang between 2 light posts. The foundation board is hosting a recognition dinner next week, Vanessa added. To honor Commander Mitchell and the entire response team, I looked at them. My family, who had spent most of my adult life trying to change me, now fully embracing the path I had chosen and the woman I loved. The transformation seemed almost too complete to be real. Why the sudden change? I asked, the question escaping before I could consider its bluntness. After years of dismissing my choices, why are you all so invested now? My father lowered the banner, exchanging glances with my mother before answering. The night of the gala, when Admiral Wilson saluted Commander Mitchell, and then you, I realized something profound. I've spent my life measuring success by wealth and social position, but in that moment I saw a different kind of achievement. One based on service rather than acquisition. We've been so focused on building the family legacy, my mother added, that we lost sight of what truly matters. Watching you and Eliza these past weeks, seeing the real impact of your work, has been humbling. Marcus, who had remained quiet, finally spoke. I've been running the numbers on the Foundation's humanitarian investments compared to our traditional portfolio. Do you know what I discovered? The social return on investment for disaster response is exponentially higher than anything else we fund. Not just in terms of lives saved, but in long-term community resilience. Leave it to my brother to find validation through financial metrics, yet his analysis reflected a genuine shift in perspective. He was applying his skills to something beyond profit margins. The Admiral's salute opened our eyes. My father concluded, but what's kept them open is watching you do work that truly matters. Work that changes lives. Before I could respond, the distant sound of aircraft engines drew our attention skyward. The massive transport plane appeared on the horizon, growing larger as it approached the runway. My heart raced with anticipation. The weeks of separation suddenly compressed into this single moment of return. As the plane taxied to a stop and personnel began to disembark, I searched anxiously for Eliza among the uniforms. When she finally appeared at the top of the stairs, I felt the world narrow to a single focal point. She looked thinner, more weathered than when she'd left, but her posture remained impeccable, her movements precise as she descended to the tarmac. Protocol required her to complete certain official tasks before personal reunions, so I waited with growing impatience as she conferred with senior officers and directed her team. When she finally turned toward me, her professional mask slipped just enough to reveal the emotion beneath: exhaustion, relief, and something deeper that belonged only to us. I moved toward her, no longer concerned about military decorum or family expectations. She met me halfway, gathering me into an embrace that spoke volumes about the weeks apart. For a moment, we simply held each other, reconnecting after the separation that had tested us both. "Welcome home," I whispered against her shoulder. "Best words I've heard in 2 months," she replied, her voice rough with fatigue but warm with feeling. When we finally separated, she noticed my family standing nearby with their banner and hesitated. "Your family came? They wanted to thank you," I explained. "They've been instrumental in the relief efforts." She straightened her uniform and approached them with professional composure, but I could see her surprise when my mother stepped forward to embrace her. "Welcome home, Eliza," my mother said warmly. "We're so grateful for your safe return." My father shook her hand with genuine respect. "Commander, the work your team accomplished was extraordinary. The Foundation has been honored to support your efforts." Eliza accepted their welcome with grace, but I could see the questions in her eyes, the wonder at this transformation from the family who had once dismissed her as merely my boss. As we prepared to leave the airfield, Admiral Wilson approached our group. My family instinctively straightened their posture in the presence of his authority. "Commander Mitchell," he acknowledged with a nod. "Exemplary work under extremely difficult conditions. Your after-action report is already informing preparations for future responses." "Thank you, Admiral," Eliza replied. The success of the operation depended on the entire team, including our stateside support. She glanced meaningfully at me. Admiral Wilson turned to me with a smile. "Ms. Reynolds, your logistics systems proved invaluable. The new protocols you developed for cross-border resource allocation have been adopted as standard procedure." Then, to my surprise, he addressed my family directly. "The Reynolds Foundation made a significant difference in this operation. Your corporate resource contributions accelerated our response time by approximately 36 hours. That translates to thousands of lives potentially saved." My father, accustomed to commanding rooms but suddenly deferential in the presence of military authority, nodded solemnly. "We were honored to help, Admiral, and we're establishing a permanent humanitarian response fund to support future operations. An excellent initiative. Admiral Wilson approved." I hope you'll consult with Commander Mitchell and Ms. Reynolds in its development. Their expertise would be invaluable. That's exactly our intention, my mother confirmed. As Admiral Wilson departed, I watched my family absorb the impact of his words, the official recognition of their contributions alongside Eliza's and mine. What had begun as an awkward attempt to repair family relationships had evolved into genuine commitment to something larger than themselves. That evening, my parents insisted on hosting a welcome dinner for Eliza at their home, not a formal affair with social connections, but an intimate family gathering to celebrate her return. As we sat around the table, sharing stories and plans for the humanitarian fund, I marveled at how naturally Eliza fit into this setting that had once seemed impossible to imagine. The fund should prioritize rapid deployment capabilities, she was explaining to my father. The first 72 hours are critical in disaster response. He nodded thoughtfully. We could establish pre-positioned resource caches in strategic locations. Reduce logistics lag time. My mother, meanwhile, was discussing volunteer coordination with Emma and Vanessa, all three animated by possibilities I had never expected them to care about. What are you thinking? Eliza asked quietly, noticing my contemplative expression. That I never imagined this scene, I admitted. My family, engaged in humanitarian planning. You, comfortable at their table. All of us aligned around something that matters. She smiled, taking my hand beneath the table. People can surprise you when given the chance. Later that night, finally alone in my apartment, Eliza and I lay tangled together, reconnecting after the long separation. She traced the lines of my face as if memorizing them anew. I missed you, she murmured. Every day, every hour. I felt closer to you during this deployment than any before. I told her, working together, even at a distance, it created a different kind of connection. She nodded, understanding exactly what I meant, partners in every sense. I've been thinking, I said, propping myself up on one elbow to look at her more directly. About the future. About us. Her eyes held mine steadily. What about us? I want more of this. More partnership. More building something meaningful together. I took a deep breath. I want forever, Eliza. A slow smile spread across her face, warming her tired features. Are you proposing to me, Catherine Reynolds? Inelegantly, but yes. I laughed. Will you marry me? Instead of answering immediately, she reached for her uniform jacket draped over a nearby chair and removed something from the pocket, a small velvet box that made my heart skip. I was going to do this properly, she explained, opening the box to reveal a simple but elegant ring, with dinner and perhaps some strategic planning regarding optimal timing. Of course you were, I teased, my eyes filling with unexpected tears. But since you've accelerated the timeline. She took my hand, suddenly formal despite our disheveled state. Catherine Reynolds, would you do me the honor of becoming my wife? Partner with me in all things, personal and professional, for the rest of our lives. Yes, I whispered as she slipped the ring onto my finger. 1,000 times yes. The next morning, we shared our news with my family over brunch, another gathering that would have seemed impossible just months before. Their genuine joy at our engagement confirmed how far we had all come from that tense dinner before the Admiral's gala. We'll host the wedding, my mother offered immediately. The garden will be perfect in the spring. Actually, I exchanged glances with Eliza. We were thinking of something simpler, perhaps on the beach where we had our first weekend away. To my surprise, my mother didn't protest. Whatever would make you happiest, dear. It's your day. My father raised his glass. To Catherine and Eliza, may your partnership continue to inspire all of us to focus on what truly matters. As glasses clinked around the table, I felt a profound sense of completion, not because I had finally won my family's approval, but because I had remained true to myself long enough for them to see my authentic path. The Admiral's salute had opened their eyes, but what kept them open was witnessing the genuine impact of the work Eliza and I did together. 6 months later, we stood barefoot on that same beach, exchanging vows surrounded by a unique gathering. My family, alongside Eliza's military colleagues, 2 worlds converging around our commitment to each other. Admiral Wilson attended in full dress uniform, offering another salute that now symbolized not revelation, but respect between equals. The Reynolds Humanitarian Response Fund launched the same day, with Eliza and me serving as its founding advisors. What had begun as my family's attempt to repair our relationship had evolved into a substantial commitment to supporting disaster relief worldwide, a legacy more meaningful than anything they had originally envisioned for me. As Eliza and I moved through our reception, accepting congratulations from guests from every facet of our lives, my brother Marcus pulled me aside for a rare moment of candor. "You know, I always thought you were settling for less," he admitted, taking the easy path by avoiding the family business. I raised an eyebrow. "Government service is many things, but easy isn't one of them." He laughed, acknowledging the truth in my words. "I see that now. But more importantly, I see that you've built something remarkable, professionally and personally. Something with real impact." He glanced toward Eliza, who was deep in conversation with my father about expanding the humanitarian fund. "You chose the harder path, the one that matters." "Not harder," I corrected gently. "Just different. We each have to find our own way to contribute." Later, as Eliza and I shared our first dance as a married couple, I reflected on the journey that had brought us to this moment. How an admiral's salute had transformed my family's perception, opening their eyes to value they had previously overlooked. How remaining authentically myself despite years of dismissal had ultimately led to deeper understanding than I could have imagined. "What are you thinking?" Eliza asked as we moved together under the stars. "That sometimes the greatest act of courage is simply staying true to yourself until others catch up," I replied. "And that recognition, when it finally comes, is sweetest when it's for who you truly are, not who others wanted you to be." She smiled, the expression lighting her entire face. "And that partnerships, the right ones, make us stronger than we could ever be alone." To partnerships, I agreed, leaning in to kiss my wife as our families, colleagues, and friends surrounded us with approval that no longer defined us but enriched the life we had chosen together. In the years that followed, the Reynolds Humanitarian Response Fund would grow to become one of the most effective disaster relief organizations in the world, with Eliza and me guiding its development alongside our continued service to the country. My family would discover a new purpose through this work, one that transcended financial success to embrace genuine impact. And I would never again doubt the power of staying true to my authentic path, even when others failed to see its value. Because true recognition isn't found in admirals, salutes, or family approval. It comes from knowing your own worth and doing work that matters, with people who value you for exactly who you are. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.